John, with the unbelievably talented and innovative friend of ours and colleague, Ursula Whiteside, on today, in honor of Laura Draper, this is going to be the only serious stuff podcast.
Don't believe that for a second.
No interactive segments.
Ursula, please, don't believe this.
No super fan drawing on paper. None of that.
Yeah. So this is going to be the first one starting off with a bold-faced lie? That's really what you mean?
Hey, Ursula, one more thing I want to start with is you were so sweet. I saw the video of the 50th anniversary that you and John both, 50th anniversary, my 50th birthday party.
50th anniversary of whole life. Yes.
My birthday's actually coming up, Ursula. It's not yet, but that was so much fun. I so appreciated both of you being there. That's been a heap of years ago.
It was great. It was what, 20 years ago, David?
And everybody was there. It was amazing.
Oh, who was everybody? Fergus from
Fergus was there. Yeah.
Across the pond.
Kevin Hines was there.
Richard McKeon playing. Right. I remember playing, pool with Richard.
Yes.
From Samka.
Eduardo, Sally, Jamie.
Well, we have so much to catch up on. Let's jump into this, guys.
Sounds good.
Welcome aboard Lifelines with David and John, your guide to charting the transformative course of crisis intervention and the game-changing 988 Lifeline.
Welcome back to Lifelines, the 988 podcast with my buddy Brooklyn. Been working with for a minute, but I've also been working with this amazing person for so long. One of the most, her superpower is caring and empathy. And I don't say that as understatement. She's an amazing innovator. And John, how terrific it is to tell our audience about our guest.
Yes, our good friend, Dr. Ursula Whiteside. She is a national leader in developing and delivering low-cost, immediately accessible interventions for people experiencing emotional and suicidal crises. These are all interventions that are grounded in lived and studied experience and are making a difference in people's lives now. And speaking of now, Ursula founded and has been directing NowMattersNow.org since 2015, an incredible website that provides practical DBT-influenced tools for reducing psychological pain, enhancing coping, and connecting with others, finding hope and healing. Ursula has been learning, researching, and teaching at the University of Washington since 2007, where she's been an influential member of their Department of Psychiatry's clinical faculty since 2011. She is a visionary influencer embodying the lived and studied expertise that we love. And we couldn't be more delighted to welcome you to our podcast today, Ursula Whiteside.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And Ursula, every week we're going down memory lane a bit of the legacy of crisis intervention, suicide prevention, as well as casting a vision to the future. And we're going to do that with you today. And our audience, we hope all of you will like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you watch, catch, listen to your podcast with us. But John, the first thing we like to do is get to know our guest a little bit and our audience to understand a little bit about who they are. And Ursula, we do something we call the super fan segment. Now, John, 33 episodes in, I don't think I've mentioned, in case you've missed it, I'm a super fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, you haven't. And of course, you're a sporting Iron Man today.
And John, what are you a super fan of?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm not a huge, I used to be a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but what I also really love are horror movies.
Oh no. Did you see A Smile 2?
No, I did see Terrifier 2 recently. It is the most outrageous thing.
But it looks horrifying. Yeah, I saw a commercial with it, and it was just where the Terrifier was staring at someone in a restaurant, and its face changed. It was terrifying.
Oh,
I was really literally spooked out after it. Yeah.
Do you do horror movies, Ursula?
Yep, I like them. I'm around kids who like horror movies, so by proxy, I'm there.
Wow.
So, but our goal today is to figure out what Ursula is a super fan of. So John and I are going to write down on a piece of paper,
Here we go.
and you're going to judge who came the closest, if
Okay.
either of us. All right. So I'm going to say Ursula is a super fan of.
It's amazing that we have known you for years, Ursula, but I don't really know what you're a super fan of, so I am going to take a wild guess.
All right,
Okay, do it.
Let's see, John. Let's take a shot. I'm a little interested in where John's going to go with this.
It's pretty mundane, but I'm just going to go with, plain old cats, because I think we're cat.
Well, you would be definitely right about that. Apparently my second word was kitty. So yes.
Oh,
Ding, 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 ding.
good,
Okay. So John's in the early lead here. That seems like cheating, though. There was a cat in the background a minute ago. Now,
No, that
good.
was
I
a dog.
didn't even see that.
oh, that was a big dog.
Yeah, that was a big. He's gone. He'll be back.
See,
The
you
Observant Award of the day, John.
wrote down dog.
And this is super fan. Not that she has pets or she has a couch in the background, John. Come on, let's get it right. So,
right.
John, I'm going to say Ursula is a super fan of ice baths.
Wow, you just drew that too. That's amazing.
He does it within seconds.
I'm a huge fan. I actually want to have a monthly or a weekly event where people can all join together and do it to practice and just do a Instagram live or something like that.
That
That is
picture,
a-
is it actually
Are you
real
a polar
fun?
bear too? Do you do those polar bear things where you go swimming in January at the beach?
I think in Minnesota, April is not warm at all. So there was a time where there was some breaking of ice and getting in around April, around prom. And it was very cold.
So, Ursula, we want to have a brief segment where you do that on the podcast. And of course,
I would
you
love
and I did that on the Crisis Jam, and you
Yes.
cheated. You set me up.
Well, I forgot to tell you that it shouldn't be too cold, and it was way too cold. I just miscalculated, and you had too much ice, and it was in the water for way too long. I'm glad you didn't pass out.
Let me ask David. Both of us were right. If you had to give up ice baths or your cat, what would you give up?
John, that's cheating.
I would
No,
probably
what?
I would just hold my cat in the ice bath so that I could do both of them and not have to give up either.
I would only pet my cat when I'm in the ice bath.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, John, this amazing episode is brought to us by Behavioral Health Link, our sponsor for today. Tell us a little bit about their crisis software platform.
Oh, always happy to do that. And Ursula, as we know, has been a major force in elevating the presence of people with lived expertise in developing suicide prevention interventions and programs. And this principle guides us in our technology development as well. As lived expertise has shaped our BHL platform's state-of-the-industry call center module. Now, we know that every crisis call is about the relationship between the counselor and the caller, and technology should at best reinforce, at least not distract, from that listening, supportive connection. So in developing our software, we gained essential inputs from both our counselors on the lines and prominent certified peer specialists who know the voices on the other side of that line. So they made sure that our contact center provided person-centered tips and caring reminders to counselors while making required data gathering effortless and seamless. We want to make it as non-intrusive as possible. So to learn more about how lived and studied expertise is built into the DNA of the BHL call center platform, just check us out at behavioralhealthlink.com. David?
Thanks so much, John. And John, we've been referencing this spreadsheet that was shared with us by a private equity firm who was reaching out to us for interest. But they had done 60 customer reviews of the various major products in the field, and they came to the conclusion that we were the market leader in that space. So I really appreciate, John, the work you, Dr. Chuck, Henry, and so many others are doing at BHL.
Great team.
Yeah, I'm smashing that virtual heart button.
Nice.
Thanks so much, Ursula. So, Ursula, a couple of weeks ago, we had Shelby Rowe on the program, and our next segment is the good news. And we're typically looking at a new news item. So the week she was on, we showed the revamped refreshed, new and improved nowmattersnow.org website,
Impressive.
the homepage.
Right.
But today, what I'd like to do in the good news is actually reflect back on this movement of lived experience, which you've been such a key partner in. And I'd like to go all the way back. I can't believe this has been 10 years, you two, but this was the White House Forum. And I started looking in 17 and 16 and 15. This was 2014 when, John, you moderated a panel with Quicks, Heidi, Diana,
yeah.
And a host of others. Ursula, you and I believe were there on that day.
Yeah.
But it was the White House put on a mental health care better series, but they had a special panel on lived experience. And I wish I had an audio of Diana, but I did take a quick little audio of Heidi. Let's see if it'll play. And she talks about, she says, from that moment on, I had to do something. But Ursula, I bring this up for two reasons. One, a decade of lived experience work changing the field and the culture and our interventions and work. But also this loving relationship with another amazing pioneer, Diana. Actually, John, the irony is I found this on Ursula's Facebook page at the top. And I'm like, what are they looking at? And then when I opened up the picture, there's a cup. And I couldn't quite figure it out. But sure enough, of course, I landed up later on finding the full picture, which is you were doing an ice bath thing.
That's hilarious.
Absolutely. That was us. Yeah.
So, Ursula, talk about Diana and the impact she had on you and your work and the friendship that you two had.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Actually, in this picture, Diana, she's known about ice water for a long time. She went through extensive DBT programs, and no one had ever convinced her to do this. So this is one of my shining moments where I've convinced her to do it. And I think not in small part because I'm going to do it with her, which I think more of us should do with the people we ask to do the cold water or other various things. And so she and I met probably in 2013 when her therapist or previous therapist reached out to me because she knew I was creating the Now Matters Now project to see if I might be interested in having Diana join me. And then since then we were fast friends and spent time holidays together. And she's from Mexico, so she's got this very different cultural background and a laugh that I don't know. She's the kind of person, like, if you hug, like your heart warms, like, if you're feeling kind of Grinchish, it melts a little bit. And I always felt like a sense of home around her. I didn't feel stressed around her. And that was really nice. She was just such a lovely person.
Oh, John, you moderated that panel where she was centerpiece, right there in the middle. And what was your reflections on your work with Diana?
My last conversation with her was, I think, I would say 2 years ago at the SPRC meeting, Suicide Prevention Resource Center meeting. And we had such a great conversation, and we promised to follow up with each other to try and explore some new ideas that we had in common together. And it was specifically about working with peers and how, and some innovative ways in which we could help expand the use of peers and also enhance warm lines too. And we said, let's make sure we talk soon. Yeah. So she was always a person I looked forward to talking to.
Her videos, she had many videos. She still has on Now Matters Now. And there is one on opposite action. And opposite action is a skill where it's like you're choosing to do the opposite of what your urges are telling you to do, which is very hard. And a lot of people commented, I didn't understand that skill until I heard Diana talk about it. And she just walked through it step by step. And at that White House thing, she was terrified. And I think I was there as her emotional support friend. And so I was like sitting next to her, holding her hand and also kind of coaching her. She didn't need coaching, but about what to do, and just reminding her that who she's talking to are the people with lived experience. Like, nobody else really matters. Like, you can speak directly to them. That helped her a bit to release and relax. Mm-hmm.
So, Ursula, I can't remember if I've told you this or not, but I got an outreach from Diana last year. It was just months before she passed away, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 months. And she likely had seen your video in our Moving America's Soul on Suicide documentary.
Yes.
She had seen some of the others, and she called me up and she said, "I'm going to be in your film." And I said, "You're not, because I've already finished it." And she's like, "You don't have a person who speaks Spanish, who's from Hispanic origin. You need me in this film." And I said, "You're absolutely right, but I've got a framework and it's done." I said, "Let's do another film that is focused on a more global, and you'll be in that one." And she joined the team. And tragically, we did not spend that time capturing her story before she passed away. So I hate that, but it is my intention, Ursula. That first film, we honored Jan Mockenstorm at the end, and it is our intention to do the same with Diana, hopefully when we finish the second series.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I should note her death was unexpected and medically related to things that she'd been struggling with chronic conditions for her whole life. But it still was just a complete shock to all of us and quite devastating. I actually was in the room that we held her memorial a couple weeks ago, and just being in that room again brought up all sorts of good feelings.
Yeah. She died of a stroke, Ursula?
Yeah, she'd had a combination, I believe, of heart attack related events and ultimately a stroke.
Mm-hmm. So, John, what a beautiful picture that Ursula is sharing with us. What if we all, alongside, not just sitting alongside, walking alongside, but actually engaging in what we were asking our guests, patients, clients to do, that we would do it with them. We would have a very different system, I would bet, John.
Yeah, and again, there would not be that difference between us and them would further disappear, which is really what we're trying to get to, and probably no better guest to illustrate that than you, Ursula. And Ursula.
Hey, John, before we jump in, I know you're just about to jump in, but I did make a promise to Laura that we would do extra segments. I think I did, right up front. So let's do a segment that we call, because Diana and Ursula are both from Seattle, and John represents behavioral health in Atlanta. So this is, Ursula, the Seattle versus Atlanta segment. And we're going to do a quick set of questions. And Ursula, you get to drive here, but you're trying to beat John. So you can either you can either own the question and you're going to have to tell us about Seattle, or you can pass to John and he's going to have to tell us about Atlanta.
No, I'm going to have to pass it over to you if I'm going to talk about Atlanta, David, please.
Nice try, John.
Why don't you take Brooklyn? Why isn't this Seattle versus Brooklyn? Come on now.
So Ursula, you get a point if you get it right about Seattle or John gets it wrong about Atlanta.
Oh.
All right, okay. So number one, Ursula, you can tell us the nickname of Seattle or push that to John for Atlanta.
The Emerald City.
The Emerald City, 1-0. We'll insert a sound effect here. Ding, ding. We're going to have a question about iconic companies from Seattle or Atlanta. You want the Seattle one, or you want to pass John the Atlanta one?
I can take that.
All right, so within 10 years, when was Starbucks founded in Seattle?
1974.
At 1971. It's 2-0, John.
Mm-hmm.
Ding, ding.
Those are full calls for her. Come on now.
So this is a key music question of Seattle versus Atlanta. You going to own 3 in a row, or are you going to push one to John?
We'll try it.
All right, give us 2 key grunge bands which started in Seattle.
That's too easy.
Is so hard.
Please.
So Nirvana would be one. And Audio Slave would be another.
Like I didn't have Audio Slave. I
Oh,
didn't
that's
have
interesting.
Actually, that's quite grunge. I'm actually thinking of the other one.
Soundgarden, right?
Soundgarden. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
There you
All right,
go.
so that's 3 in a row for Ursula. This is 3-0, John. The next question, rainy reputation. We're going to ask this question of John. John, who gets more rain, Seattle or Atlanta?
Oh, I'm thinking Seattle might get a little more rain.
That's incorrect. Seattle gets 37 inches of rain a year, and Atlanta gets 50 inches. So that point goes to Ursula. Now, Ursula, just for the record, you and I are friends, but I'd never cheat. If John had said Atlanta, I would not have said, you're wrong, John, because Seattle gets 150 days of rain.
Either way, this was set up.
It was a setup, John.
John, I would have
Atlanta
got that
has
question wrong.
113 days of rain, but a lot more rain falls.
Yeah, it's really more like it's spitting on you here all the time.
Yes, right.
All right, so John, just for the record, Seattle versus Atlanta. John, I need you to do better. Behavioral health things found in Atlanta.
I'm not even getting a chance to answer, and then
Ursula won that. Ursula won
any trick questions. They were all softballs.
Ursula won 4-0, John. All right, John, we're going to give you a chance to at least get on the scoreboard.
And I'm learning about Atlanta, so here we go.
If she had pitched it to you on music, give us 3
in Atlanta
rap bands that rap artists or rap bands that started in Atlanta.
Oh my God.
Trap, rap music.
Yeah. There's of course Killer Mike and what is it? Run for the Jewels or whatever or something. I don't know. I'm not familiar with a lot of Atlanta bands. Well, Georgia bands, yes, but not. Oh God.
Ursula, you look like you know some of these. You have a couple?
Well, I mean, at a recent convention for one political party, I believe in Atlanta, like there was a rapper who was rapping for Atlanta. And if not, let's cut this part off.
So, John, I'll
definitely
just for future use, John. Outkast is from Atlanta.
Okay.
T.I., Ludacris, Killer Mike. Yeah, all good. Good.
Yeah, I think I got the.
I've got one.
I'm thinking of Little John. Where's Little John then?
I also from Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Great. John, we'll give you honorable mention. You came in second, John.
Okay, good. And
you guys.
Next time we'll do Brooklyn versus Seattle. Is that all right, David? Please.
I mean, I did get like Audio Slave wrong, so Soundgarden.
Yeah, it was because Tom Morello, who's in that band, was not from Seattle. But...
All right, so John, back to you.
Oh, back to me. Actually, it's going to be back to Ursula because what we really want to do is go back with Ursula, way back when Ursula was much younger, though you're still young. Those days when you were actually starting to think, what am I going to do with my life? And what was the turning point that got you to say, I think I want to get into behavioral health, and I think maybe even psychiatry, psychology, or suicide prevention? What was your journey?
I mean, it's pretty simple. I had a really good psychology teacher in college at Bemidji State University before I transferred to the University of Washington. And it clicked a little late, a little slow, but it clicked like that you could have control over your emotions and behavior. You could have influence. And prior to that, I really felt adrift that some people just were magic, that they could remain consistent in their lives, that they could meet the goals that they wanted. And I felt like I was always desperately trying to do those things and always often failing. I mean, I met a lot of my goals. So that really started it. And I got an internship at the University of Minnesota at a research clinic. And I asked, what's the most exciting thing going on, to the woman who ran the clinic. And she said, I would work with Marsha Linehan in Seattle. And so I'd actually been born in Washington. And so there I was. And I headed that way, starting for my junior year.
That's interesting. So somebody in Minneapolis said, you should be in Seattle. They didn't say stay here and work with us, because they could have been very, very selfish, but instead they knew that the Mecca And the best place to go was with Marsha.
Yeah.
And it was. What a turning point.
She said, she's just doing the most innovative things and it's focused on emotion. I think you would really like that.
Mm.
Do you remember your first meeting with Marsha, Ursula?
What I remember early on about her is feeling both love and fear at the same time. Like I instantly felt this love towards her, positive emotion, and then also being terrified that I would disappoint her or I would do something silly or mess something up for her. And make
some
her life harder.
expectation that came with being a part of her team.
That's right. Yeah, there were very high expectations.
So the ultimately, Ursula, you go from that training with dialectical behavior therapy and think through micro skills, and you found Now Matters Now. Mm-hmm. Tell us where the inspiration for Now Matters Now came.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to forget the day that I called Marsha mom. Only happened once. I think she actually liked that. But yeah, I was there from 1999 as an undergraduate all the way to like 2008 when I went on my clinical internship. And that year was brutal. Like it was at the University of Washington's Trauma One Medical Center, Harborview. It was an inpatient psychiatry and then another rotation. And the real world was not the same as Marsha's world. Like the Marsha's world where the patients were the center of everything. Though that's what guided us. We made decisions based on, what they would want. It was really guided by empathy, and like the real world had a lot more things going on that deterred from that. And it was, I often felt like very much restricted by what I could do with the people that I was serving. I wanted to do all these DBT things but I couldn't get them into treatment. Oftentimes because they'd recently made an attempt and the DBT clinics were full with huge waiting lists and they were very expensive. And then, that's what I thought that they needed. And then normal therapists would not take people who had recently attempted suicide. So it was like these people had come to a point where many of them were like asking desperate for help. And it was really painful to not be able to give them. And so what I started to do is give them a card with my phone number and I'll write a little caring message on it on the back. And then I would write this website, dbtselfhelp.com, because at the time, it still exists today. It was one of the few websites that had these free online resources.
Yeah.
And so when I got out, I just promised myself I would make something that was built by people with lived experience that included more information, but included real stories of people who struggled. So that project got started started writing it around 2010 or 11.
Such a powerful story, Marsha's work with DBT around the influence of lived experience. So that brings us to our over-under, our trivia question for the day. And once again, we love putting John Draper on the hot seat. He's really good at it, though. So, John, I think you've got a pretty amazing, you're well above 500 on your over-under. But today's question comes to us from our dear friend, Dr. Dave Jobs. And it is, Ursula's talking about how powerfully effective DBT was. John, Dr. Jobs talks about the number of randomized clinical trials which have shown the effectiveness of either DBT or CAMS. If you add that together, Dr. Jobs says it's at least X number of studies, randomized clinical trials, which have shown the effectiveness, reducing suicidal behaviors, for example, of DBT and or CAMS. What's that number, John?
There's a number. I think there's a really high number for DBT, and David is racking them up. So I'm gonna say 18.
18 is a great guess, Ursula. Over or under?
That was my first guess. And then I started thinking about the work that David has been putting out in the past few years. And then the work that people who were trained by Marsha have been doing in the last 10 years. And I thought it might even be as high as 32.
Oh my God! So John has nailed the answer 2 or 3 times. If the person being asked gets the number correctly, the second person doesn't have a chance because it's done. We've never had a guest nail the number, I don't think, John. But what Dave said is there are 8 studies which show that CAMS is effective, and there are at least 24 that show DBT. So that would be 32, Ursula.
Wow.
I
Look
almost
at
got
that.
Starbucks too. My original was 1971, and then I changed it to 74.
Very impressive.
That's
Yeah,
really impressive.
Mine was a randomized controlled guess just now, but yours was right on. That was perfect.
I would have guessed. I thought it was much higher, John. So Ursula's nailing it to the wall is really, really terrific.
I mean, because those trials, they take years. Like, they're full-time jobs for, 20 people oftentimes. It's an enormous amount of work, and to have that many is pretty impressive. Yeah.
Well, and that being said, when did DBT? When was that released? When did she first?
Yeah, her manual, she'd been doing it before that, but her manual was first released in 1993. And I want to say that, well, we'll have to check on this. The first trial was 97, but I'd need to double check on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, I want to reflect on a couple of things here. One is effectiveness in the realm of suicide prevention and crisis intervention, for that matter. There's not a ton that has been proved effective. Before Matty Gould's work, and we hadn't seen much in the crisis space. We've certainly seen that work since, but we haven't seen a lot in the suicide prevention space. And 32 double-blind, randomized clinical trial. This is heavily scientific work, not biased work, not promoted work, but work showing actual quantifiable impacts. That is tough.
Well, and just to underscore that's as promising as that is, CAMS and DBT are still really hard to come by. I mean, the fact that that we have these incredibly effective treatments, yet they are really hard for many people to access.
Now that dog walks in the background, I think I need my eyes checked again.
Yeah, he's pretty big. I know. I was wondering.
Yeah.
I worked on, we call them NIMH 3A and 3B. And then we had a grant from Eli Lilly. And then there was another grant going on while I worked as her therapist and participant coordinator. And starting in 99 to 2006 or something. And yeah, like they involved immense amounts of work.
So, Ursula, I think it's not a surprise that lived experience is behind the power of this work. But in 2011, that was not known to most of us. There was a panel at AAS with Jason Padgett, C.W. Tillman, Stephanie Weber, and Kate Comtois.
Oh, right.
Those were the 4 speakers. And Marsha walked to the microphone and said, have you guys not heard of contagion? And she seemed to be negative about that. And it was not even a year before she came out about her own lived experience. She spoke at AAS a few years later. And I remember reading the article on the plane. I didn't know it was coming, Ursula, and I just wept. I just sat there and wept because it was so inspiring and moving. But and it was very limited, but my experience with Marsha was that she both was very proud of coming out and also wished she hadn't at the very same time, and that it was a mixed bag of feelings and ideas. Talk about that from knowing her personally.
This was very interesting. So when I started there as an undergraduate, I was answering the phones and people would call trying to get into research studies. But sometimes people would call and say, please tell me that she's one of us, because the way she writes, the things she says, she must be one of us. It would mean so much to me.
Wow.
Because I'd seen some of her marks from self-injury, I thought that it wasn't openly known, not necessarily talked about. And so I would say, it is true. Yes, she is one of you. Not that I talked to Marsha about it. And I guess I was surprised to learn and I shouldn't have been, but to learn that was something, and sometimes in ways that she felt ashamed of. And so it was multiple things. It was, I am not telling the full truth by not telling this. I don't want to die a coward. I don't want to increase risk. And contagion was something she was very much grappling, I think, with in the lead up to the decision to share her story. And those things were both going on. When I approached her about the study, the work that I was doing with Now Matters Now, I said, I want people to tell their story. And she's like, no, you should not do that. And eventually I convinced her. I talked to her about like the power of social modeling and the power of telling a story where the outcome shows a way out.
Yeah.
And so she ended up being a consultant on that project and advisor, but she was not on board at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Stunning.
Yeah.
So, Ursula, I want to talk to you offline. I've talked about doing it for years, and I finally have put pen to paper. I'm writing a book with a working title, The Last Stigma: The Power of Lived Experience Stories.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And starting with William Styron and going through the key figures from my vantage point who opened up this opportunity for transformation, folks like Heidi and DeQuincy and Kevin Hines. But Marsha is Kay Redmond Jameson. But Marsha, to me, is a critical part of that story, and hope to have some more conversations with you about your working in her lab and that dynamic. What you just said feels to me like she was more influenced by some of the biases and discrimination that was in. It almost feels like internalized discrimination.
Exactly. I mean, she was so oppressed for so long. In many, many ways. And I don't know how she survived in getting through a clinical PhD program. And I mean, she lived the skills that she used, and she wouldn't have been here without it, So she was desperate to find a way, a way.
And Ursula, I'm sure she felt oppressed and discriminated by the very system that she was now a part of.
I don't think she would have said that, though.
Yeah.
I don't think she thought about it that way.
No, but I mean, that was her experience growing up, going through hospitals, being put in seclusion wards and locked away.
Yeah.
Here she was a part of that, but trying to change it from within.
Yeah.
That same day that we went to the microphone, Eduardo followed Marsha. And I don't remember what he said. I just remember the feeling I had of, okay, I want to say something too. And I remember the words I used. I said, this is a watershed moment. And it was years later before I recognized Marsha created that moment more than anybody in that room potentially, and also fought it at the same time.
I mean, wild. It is just wild. And that when she came out, it was not only that, it was presenting at our main suicide conference, and then coming out in the New York Times. And then also it was this presentation at the institution. She'd been involuntarily hospitalized for more than 2 years of her life.
Wow.
So we all went there,
Wow.
We all toured the grounds. And she gave a speech at that, and it was amazing.
I'll bet it was. The turn of events, though, for you to be a part of that changeling process for her, and to see her, and she was pushed out of the closet for the most part, or dragged out by the people who saying, I want you to please be a part of us. Tell us that you're one of us. Yeah. I wondered how did all of that influence how you are now? I mean, here she was hiding it. And you have very much made this a part of your professional identity and your entire website, nowmattersnow.org. Everybody, your entire team, your crew, also are people with lived experience and also professionals.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it was a reaction to her, because I don't think she, at the time, could see the value in that story for whatever reason. And I knew that's what people were searching, like that's what people called for. That's what I did. I always searched for stories. Like I knew that was what would be one of the things that would be really helpful. And I never saw this woman scared. This is the only thing I ever saw her scared about. She is never scared.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are many things that she could have been scared of, even in the course of the time that I was with her. This is the only thing. When she was at the AAS talk, I just remember how terrified she was. It was like almost like she was dissociating maybe even a little bit before the talk. And afterwards, she felt really emotional and rushed out. I remember Kate was in tears too, just feeling for Marsha and all that she's been through and how she'd been treated at times. And yeah, that was pretty emotional.
Wow.
We got to put her in his dread.
And you know what, Ursula, one other thing that I wanted to note is that, you were earlier saying, we were talking about the effectiveness of DBT and we were talking about the effectiveness of CAMS. And I was noting it's just not accessible. And you wanted to make sure that these DBT skills that were so hard to access were now on a website where anybody could get on there for free. And we talked about how important that research was. Has there been research on your side? I believe there has, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, there's been research in a couple of different ways. While we were working on the Now Matters Now project, essentially the website came out of me begging our funders, AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and National Institutes of Mental Health, could I use some money to get this out to people right away? Because, I want people to have access to this. And there were two research projects going on at the time. One that turned out really positively, where we started delivering these skills. It was me delivering the skills through messaging and interacting with people in the health system. And then there was a trial after that, was a very large trial that turned out negative. And it included some of the videos of people with lived experience. And that was incredibly devastating, scary, and so sad for the people who, had more negative outcomes, more self-injury than everyone else. It took a while for me to be able to really look at that. And it turned out only 30% of the people ever made it to the web page, and only 10% of those ever made it past the first page. So the uptake of this intervention, which was not like Now Matters Now, was like this guided thing, was so low.
Yeah.
That what we're really evaluating is that front end thing of, in this study, people get in a message from a person they didn't know, inviting them to do something with the word suicide in it.
Yeah.
So that's more of what we know could have had an impact. But anyway, so that there's that. But during this whole time since we started Now Matters Now, I've been collecting user data. So meaning a survey would pop up after 5 minutes. A survey would pop up for 1 minute on mobile and 5 minutes on your phone, and then eventually 8 minutes, on your laptop. After 8 minutes on your laptop, and then I think what we found, we had about 3,000 surveys when we started looking at this data. What we found was that people had reported significant reductions in their suicidal thought just by being on the website. So, and in addition, reductions in their negative emotions. And it was like a little actually surprising that something you could visit for 10 minutes or 5 minutes would have any impact at all. And so that was very promising. And I could disattach from that negative study and say, okay, this is what people are seeing and saying. One thing is that not everybody fills out a survey, obviously, but they were highly suicidal people filling out this survey.
Wow. Yeah.
And then our most recent study that is about to be submitted, we asked people additionally, if it was helpful, why? And so the reasons that 50% of people with suicidal thoughts had fewer after visiting. And then of the reasons why, it was really I felt less alone, was right there at the top. Right. Along with, I learned something and I felt cared for.
I think, Ursula, this most recent iteration is the first time that just the words on the page, just a quick glance, and it's like somebody gets this.
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself can start to make a difference. But if you go further and you see people who look like you and talk like you and have experiences, and this is very empowering stuff. So, Ursula, let's go into a crisis rapid fire segment. I'm going to mention some concepts of DBT and just quickly your personal reflections on the importance of that component to you and your life and your work. This key DBT tenet of the balance of acceptance and change.
Yeah. So, dialectics is in the title, dialectical behavior therapy. Most people don't know what that means, including many of us or many of the people who've gone through the treatment. But ultimately, it's this idea that often the opposite of one very important truth is another very important truth. And so the key fundamental dialectic in DBT is acceptance and change are both necessary to build a life worth living. You can't do and build the life that you want with only one or only the other. You need both of those to be necessary. And this was, this was particularly compelling to me when I was younger because I had been so much on the change end of things with my own life, really, really pushing to be perfect, to not have problems with eating, to do everything well. And when this idea of acceptance came in, I couldn't believe it first. Right. Yeah. And then as I started to do it, I started to see that the magic in it, but it took a long time to kind of release that fist.
Very cool. Yeah. Both those things are very much a part of the serenity prayer as well.
Yeah.
But the acceptance, doesn't she use the word radical, Ursula?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So complete and all the way. So this is we apply these to things like your child dying in a car accident. And it can be a very confusing topic, but it essentially means that things are caused and they make sense. They happen for a reason. They might not have been good reasons, but there is cause and effect. And that is how we explain things, even if we don't necessarily know what the cause and effect was that got us there. So we accept what has happened. We accept ourselves as we are. And that helps bring down the intensity and allows us openness to change in a way.
Interesting. Yes.
Good to see you, Rosa. Hello.
Ursula, mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Marsha did a lot of sitting meditation, and you would walk into a room if you were late for a meeting, and everyone would be sitting on these bolsters on the ground with their legs crossed. And if you went and looked around, some people would have tears running down their face. Some people would have snot running down their face. We really committed to practicing meditation, so much so that we didn't disturb even when our nose was running into our t-shirt. Meditation is very different than mindfulness. And I think that teaching people about that distinction is so helpful. And ultimately, meditation is about learning how to be still and witness things. And mindfulness is so much more accessible about being present in the moment, being here now, instead of 10 steps ahead or worrying about what you look like or worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow or that thing that you said to somebody a couple of days ago. It's you get to witness this gift of a moment that's here right now. And that's so key for doing all of the rest of the dialectical behavior therapy skills.
I'll mention a couple of more. Distress tolerance, we've leaned into that a bit.
Yeah, so this is a category of skills they are specifically tools to get through a emotional emergency, get through a crisis without making the crisis worse. Because if you think about it and take a moment, when have bad things happened? Often when something was going wrong already, and then we reacted to it in a way that ended up blowing up the situation. So it's really like a preventative measure and helping people learn how to get through situations in a way that keeps their life moving forward and not back.
The last one, validation.
Marsha's original research study was on validation. It was a peer validation study, and there's a whole lot backstory on that, but it actually turned out pretty well. And what I talk to people about is like invalidating yourself increases your negative emotions and makes it harder to think clearly. Validating yourself, just witnessing yourself as you are and accepting that, and doing that for other people is incredibly powerful, and it does reduce negative emotions, and it really allows people to be mindful and be present.
Ursula, validation, you're talking about validating yourself, but how much of a connection is there, or is it a separate lane of all the work you've done and been nationally, internationally recognized for around taking concepts like Jerome Motto's carrying letters and carrying those forward?
Yeah, I think this carrying message is a concept, and there's a beautiful article written by Jason Cherkis about carrying messages and the history of it. But ultimately, it is like letting someone know that they're not alone and that they're seen and that they're cared for and they're not judged through messages that occur over time. And what we know is that for sure, there are very things we know for sure prevent suicide. But what we know from the research trials is that this can actually prevent suicide. To just communicate with people who are in immense pain and let them know that you care about them, and that you like them, or that, you're glad they're there.
Yeah, and that follow-up care is one of those other things that we've seen over and over has made a difference in reducing suicide. There's been so many studies around that, and you're carrying that torch forward. You carrying the torch of DBT and putting it online, as you have with all your work through Marsha. You've learned so much, and she's given you so much advice, but now you're mentoring people in this new generation. You're now a new example for other people. And as people look to you as a mentor and a leader, like you once looked at Marsha, I know she must have given you a lot of great advice over the years, but what's some of the really key advice that you're giving now to people when they look up to you and say, Ursula, what should I do? How should I be in suicide prevention in this research?
David will really laugh at this one because a colleague of ours is who said it, but I really do communicate the run from a fight. Like, there are very important things worth fighting for. But if someone is miserable, coming at you, cutting you down, whatever, and they're not adding value to your life or society in some great way, you don't necessarily need to keep trying to get them to like you or have them in your life. I think, for me, it was it was a big deal to drop out of academia in the way that I did. I'm still an academic. I still do research, but I'm not working in a research institute. And because of that, I'm so much more happy, and I have so much more room for creativity, for example. So yes, not engaging with miserable stuff is a big one. Yeah.
Ursula, that interview, of course, Jan Mockenstorm and I did that interview with Dr. Don Berwick at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement in Boston. And I came back and I didn't catch that line. You watched the video, and it's the two sides of it. It's run from every fight and run where the love is, where there's a joy in, and it reminds me of a quote you gave in the video we did after the Zero Suicide 4 event in Rotterdam, where you talked about that this work can be lonely, and innovators coming together can really be a great resource and support to you. So, Ursula, you've sent me personally so many caring notes over the years and inspirational pieces, and been such a great colleague. I want to just revisit some of the events that you and I've had the chance to do together with John. And I just want a quick word or two that you reflect on. That first Atlanta Zero Suicide Summit in 2015. Quick reflection.
We had these amazing artist or an amazing artist who was making the calligraphy along the way and just helping us solidify or clarify our thinking. And also, we had the head of Henry Ford at the time speaking, and we had Aiden speaking.
Yeah,
and,
Aiden was there. That's right.
Yeah,
right.
It was just a powerful and connecting time.
I was looking for a speaker in a specific area of social justice, kind of civil rights. And Aiden had just been in USA Today, like literally a couple of days before.
Yeah.
And Ursula said, "Oh, I could get him in Atlanta, get them in Atlanta." And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And Aiden was amazing.
Yeah, Aiden Campbell, yeah, he said, yeah, no problem, and just showed up. I also just remember the time that you came to Seattle, and out of no benefit at all to yourself, I asked you to come to this all-day conference and speak at it, and I didn't have any money, and you came, and you were missing, like, yeah, you have your whole life, but what you came and what you presented was so compelling to the audience, that it really made the event. So thank you so much for doing that. That was probably 2015.
What about Sydney in 2017?
Goodness, remind me where. Well, who can forget our champagne tower? And like, I think in each of these, so I remember in Australia it was around the time that politics were really interesting, and some of the politicians were very good at keeping a conversation going, and I was so tired of people saying, "What about zero? Like, you can't say that zero suicide thing," and I'm like, just read the paper on it. Just we've talked about this, okay? And so I just remember kind of being annoyed at someone else doing it and wishing that we would be maybe more like Kellyanne Conway in that way, like just like keep going. Yeah.
Kellyanne Conway. So after, John, I think between you, me, and Ursula and Becky and Eduardo and Sally, some combination of us were at the White House 4 times in that those last 3 years of the Obama administration. And after Trump was elected, I said, well, I guess I won't be back at the White House. And then just a few years later, Ursula was back at the White House.
I know. That's
and
great.
Kellyanne Conway was sitting maybe 20, 30 feet away. And I'm like, I am not going to like her. And she made eye contact. And suddenly I had a crush. I mean, she was so smart. And I was really impressed. And of course, Trump showed up that day in the meeting.
That's amazing.
We had always had discussions that I remember hearing that Biden might come to one of those events we'd had previously, but we never had a senior official at any of those events. And then we had Ben Carson and Kellyanne Conway and Donald J. Trump at the mental health event. But going down memory lane, it's time for the true tales of behavioral health link, John.
All right, let's hear it, David.
So it's been, Ursula, I'm not really sure which year this was. You're the one, I think, who found the picture and circulated it. Did you circulate it on the 10-year anniversary?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this was the picture that I had printed out and had in my office, like, and looked at every day for years. And then that's my handwriting. Yeah. Look at us.
Yeah.
Ursula, I think you're about 20 years old in the upper right there.
Right?
There's a few faces I haven't seen in ages here. But yeah, a lot of people look different.
So, John, you were part of course, as Ursula was, with me and Mike and Richard, that what we called the Clinical Care and Intervention Task Force of the National Action Alliance, which is where Ed Coffey told the story of interfacing with Dr. Don Berwick. And what came out of that discussion was this intolerance of the status quo, and a surge of effort toward the ideal, in which the language of, you were just talking about it, Ursula, of zero suicide was born. And this concept of run from every fight, there will be those who certainly can't go to a different kind of place, but there will be all kinds of people who will be inspired and motivated to do something something different. And this was us after those original conversations. I think a year or two later, Ursula, we landed up meeting in Detroit on the campus that's in the Henry Ford boardroom, or one of their key rooms.
Yeah.
And Ed gave us a tour of the facility, and we got to meet their key leadership. So quite a journey, Ursula, to Brian Amadani leading the Zero Suicide 5 event in Liverpool this year.
I think this picture was 2012. And I also think that, with the idea of run from a fight, it's run from a fight that isn't going to get you anywhere.
Right.
So you can focus on the fights, the real fights, like moving Zero Suicide forward, like building a free website, so you have energy for the real fights,
Right.
Yeah, the side resistance, right, Ursula? Avoid the noise, and and it's for another day, John. But Ursula's bringing up the conversations we had with Joe Smith at the actually very first Zero Suicide Summit in Rotterdam, where she said that noise actually puts some wind in your sails. But let's do that story another day, John.
Let's do it, David.
So I believe, John, you've got some plain truth for us today.
Plain truth for us today. And as an acolyte of Marsha Linehan, Ursula would be among the first to remind us all that suicide prevention work is about creating a life worth living. Just ask anyone in the throes of an ultimate existential crisis to be or not to be, and they won't tell you that death is their goal so much as it is escaping this intolerable pain that shows no sign of going away. Marsha Linehan also offered that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. But what allows a person to choose to tolerate pain? What research has indicated that it is meaningfulness, including making meaning from suffering or having a purpose in life, that helps sustain people through hard times. It can enhance their overall longevity and keep them from wanting to kill themselves. As Friedrich Nietzsche reflected, he who has a why to live can bear most any how. In spite of this apparent existential vaccine, very few suicide prevention treatments focus on injecting meaningfulness into work with people who often think that life is not worth living. Instead, most suicide prevention interventions are primarily focused on addressing the reasons for suicide, the drivers causing one's misery, and diminishing them so their painful life is less intolerable. The idea is to bring the fever down first, and then perhaps we can eventually get to make meaning of one's life. And not surprisingly, research related to the most effective suicide prevention treatments and interventions include reinforcing one's reasons for living. Back in 2008, the Lifeline asked Dr. Gould and her research team to evaluate the impact of Living Works applied suicide and intervention skills trainings. That's ASSIST. We were paying for it at the time, and we wanted to find out if it was helping our counselors to better reduce suicidality in callers. And did it work? It did. She not only found that callers getting help from ASSIST-trained counselors were less suicidal, but she also determined that two factors explain the difference. ASSIST-trained counselors are more likely to address the caller's reasons for dying and reasons for living, as well as explore their connection with the most meaningful relations in their lives. And we also know that Dave Job's Collaborative Assessment and Management of Suicide, CAMS, as we were talking about earlier, is a highly effective treatment. And David notes how CAMS emphasizes the importance of a post-suicidal life, meaning that they want to change a person's attachment to suicide to an attachment to life in 4 ways. He noted actively developing the reasons for living and systematically eliminating their current reasons for dying. Secondly, exploring their plans and possibilities for a life with purpose and meaning. And thirdly, developing their lessons for living, and finally, developing their short and long-term plans and goals. And we also know that the crisis response plan that was developed by Craig Bryan showed roughly a 25% more effectiveness than the Stanley Brown safety plan in reducing suicide attempts. And Craig's enhanced crisis response plan includes a strong focus on identifying a person's reasons for living. And this enhanced plan led to 86% fewer hospitalizations for suicidal persons. It seems that after discussing their reasons for living, both the clinician and the client felt more hopeful about their ability to stay safe and cope through pain. So what if we began to intentionally develop suicide prevention treatments and interventions that focused on reinforcing meaning in one's life. And what is meant when we say reinforcing or promoting meaningfulness in suicide prevention? Well, in 2017, there was a book that came out called The Power of Meaning by Emily Esfahani Smith, and she reviewed international research and spoke with scientists, cultural leaders, and many regular folks who are leading inspiring lives. And she came up with what she refers to as the 4 pillars of meaning. I'm just going to focus on 3 of them just for the sake of time today. And these are the ones that are most relevant to suicide prevention. And you'll probably recognize the first one, which is belonging. That is feeling like I have a tribe, people who value me, understand me, people whom I can give and receive affection. In our field, we know belongingness is vital to suicide prevention. But how are we actively promoting belongingness in our work? The second pillar of meaning that Smith cites is a sense of purpose, which needs to be a goal that is stable and far-reaching, something that contributes good in the world, and something that kind of feels like you're born to do. And the third pillar that Smith identifies is storytelling. How we take the random stones of our fragmented experiences and organize them into a gravel road, a road we have been on that tells us about who we are deep down, how we got where we are today, and what it all means. A road that can tell us, my life's not discordant jazz, it's Miles Davis. And when Dr. Jennifer Lockman was at Centerstone Research Institute, she and her colleagues found in a study of college students that even when they felt they were a burden to others and that they felt like they did not belong, that they had lost their tribe, that as long as they could make meaning of stressful experiences in the story of their life, they felt less suicidal. Jennifer built on these findings to develop a specific application of meaning reconstruction therapy, which she calls Thrive. That is toward hope, recovery, interpersonal growth, values, and engagement. Now, she actually gave a really impressive demonstration of this at the recent CrisisCon, and I really thought it was fantastic. And the early findings with it show really outstanding promise. It's a 60-minute intervention designed to help suicidal persons making meaning of stressful life events and promote self-efficacy to prevent suicide attempts. Her research is demonstrating that if we have only one shot at helping someone in suicidal crisis, an hour of making meaning in their life story can construct a gravel road that has led to this place at this time, this turning point, towards a new road with new chapters to be written that they could never have imagined. So what if our suicide prevention field reckoned that our ever-increasing suicide rates had taken us to a turning point, a new road that maintains suicidal drivers in the passenger seat while intentionally steering our interventions towards a person's reasons for living? What if we focus not only on suicidal persons' protective factors, but develop their prospective factors? What if suicide prevention, assessment, and treatments routinely included strengthening a suicidal person's experience of belongingness and value to others, their sense of purpose and how it springs from who they are, and how their life story carries meaning that reveals new prospects for hope and possibility? Ursula, David, all of us, we're so fortunate to have experiences such as we have in the meaning of the work we do. And Ursula, you were talking about what it means for us to be doing the work with the people that we're doing it with, our wonderful colleagues. And for me, I know that the meaningfulness of this work has buoyed me through rough times. And immersing ourselves in our meaningful endeavors has brought us all some degree of success and happiness at times. And as Viktor Frankl observed in his Man's Search for Meaning, success, like happiness, must ensue. They cannot be pursued. However, if we can help the people in despair that we work with to pursue and experience meaningfulness as well, perhaps they will also bear through the hardest times while happiness and success ensues for them. David, that's right.
Terrific, John. And that's some great plain truth for us today. Those relationships, purpose, and storytelling, they all roll up into finding our fit. And I've certainly found my fit with the two of you and the colleagues we work with and the work we're doing. It's not rocket science. It's just a very straightforward. We got a purpose. We're about it and we're doing it together. And and all three of us love to talk about it as well. So, and wow, great, Ursula, my friend. You've been such a supporter and encourager and colleague and co-collaborator. I so appreciate you and the work you're doing. And thanks for spending the time with me and John today. And please join us next week when our guest will be another innovator, Phoenix Police Department detective and CIT International board member and leader, Sabrina Taylor, who's really been at the heart of the development of crisis services in Arizona and that direct access around the country. So whatever you're doing, please drop it and join us again on the next Lifelines. Every life, every call or crisis interaction, every story matters. So stay safe and we'll see you next time.